Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Project. I'm your host, Duke Ong with Tri-City Equity Group. Today we have Kyle Jones on the show. I met Kyle at Michael Blanc's Dealmaker Live event in Dallas last year, back when large events were still allowed. With me is my co-host, Vince Gittings.
Hey, Duke. Super excited about this show. Interviewing Kyle, a fellow operator. Me and him share a lot of the same roles in the business, in our daily operations. So it's good to talk shop about a lot of our best practices. In this show, you're going to hear about how Kyle got started, starting from a humble live-in flip, progressing through some flips, and then eventually getting the eyes open to realizing large multifamily is the best asset class in real estate. So it's really refreshing to see colleagues and friends in the industry and how they progress and how far, Kyle's a couple rungs up the ladder from us, which gives us a lot of confidence that, we're right behind him. We're doing everything the right way. And we have a great future ahead of us as well. We're going to hear Kyle's thoughts on incentivizing property managers, which is going to be key, making sure, like I say, everybody is rowing the boat in the same direction. And that's key for property managers. Also, some of his best practices as well. So stay tuned and listen to this.
Kyle is a co-founder of TruePoint Capital, where he's responsible for the company's strategic planning, investment decisions, asset management, and all aspects of the company's financial activities and operations. TruePoint Capital offers closed-end private equity funds with attractive risk-adjusted returns for qualified investors. Also, Kyle is a global sales leader for a large Fortune 100 tech company and responsible for revenue attainment of over $250 million worldwide. Kyle is also a co-founder for a high-growth residential appraisal management company with over $1 million in gross revenue in the last 18 months of business. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
All right. So how did you get started in your journey to earn passive cash flow?
Well, it took a while to really figure out that I wanted to kind of focus in on the commercial real estate aspect of it. But like a lot of folks, I just started out in the single family space. My wife and I bought our first house in 2012, and it was actually a live-in flip, if you will. We were planning to stay in it longer than we were, but at the time my job was being transferred. I was living in the Austin area at the time. I'm now in Houston. And so when we were making that move, we ended up selling that house for a nice profit. So that's when I first realized that there was a lot of power in just real estate in general. And then a couple years went by before we bought our next set of houses. But this time we really were more strategic. We weren't living in them. We bought them more as truly investment properties. Did okay, flipped a couple of them, kept a couple more as rentals, and really just knew that I had spent, when I was reflecting at that time, and even kind of in the middle of it, just the amount of time it was taken for me to manage the contractors and do everything else and manage the flips and the financial aspect of just that, and being, driving out to the property almost on not every day, but it felt like it on some of the properties. It was at least a couple times a week. And we had about 5 flips going at the time. That's when I was like, hey, we've got to reset. This is taking up way too much time, more time than I was initially anticipating. So, that's what moved us towards the rental property mindset, and then which ultimately led us to multifamily, mainly because we ran out of our own capital by buying more properties and we wanted to raise money. So that's how we got here.
Got it. And so what is your why for building cash flow?
My why is just, is really just more of a security blanket for me than anything else. A couple things that happened to me that really pushed me over the edge was when to take the action was I saw my dad get laid off later in his career. I mean, he was about 61 at the time, so he was still pre-retirement, still had a couple years left before he wanted to actually retire, and he had a really hard time finding a job. And he probably could have retired at that age if he wanted to, but he would have had to also drastically change his life to live off what he had saved up. So seeing that is really what pushed me to take the action. I mean, I had been doing research before that, but that was just like, that was it. Like that happened in the time of year. It was like around December. And then in January, that's when I bought my first house the second time. So we had already done that first one that I was mentioning in Austin. And then, when that happened, that's when it really kicked it in overdrive. And in January, we ended up buying 5 houses. So we really went from doing virtually nothing to doing, moving as quickly as possible.
And then how did you transition into multifamily?
It was really just a matter of going through that process with the single families and dealing with all the aspects of that. And, the rentals that I did have, they were good rentals. In fact, I still have a couple of those houses today just because I've had the same tenants in them since I bought them. But it's just not, there's not enough. I know there's more money that could be made by going bigger, which, we were clearing, after the property management fees. And then if we set aside reserves, I mean, we're clearing about $150 on each property. So 2 properties, that's $300, so just the power of economies of scale, was something that had my attention in the multifamily space. And then the fact that I also, had a lot of capital locked up because I still had some flips going on. And I still had, the single family homes where, on the investment properties, you got to put, 20% down or 25%. I can't remember now, but that's when I, realized I was like, hey, I want to scale this. So I know multifamily is it, but at the same time, I don't, we don't have any more money until we sell these flips. So that's when I started looking at both the multifamily and raising capital. And so we ended up buying a smaller property. It was a 14 unit. That was my first multifamily property. I still own it today, although we are in the process of selling it. But it was a good experience. That's what allowed me to, start getting the introduction to the multifamily space. And by that point, I had already been dealing with a property manager, and I knew, I was building my systems actively to figure out how best to manage the manager at that point. So,
and then how did you transition into a deal where you sponsored it as a GP?
Well, it was really just finding the right deal. At that point, I had already made some other connections with some other partners that could help raise capital, and also just bring the experience, because at that point, I've had the experience in the multifamily space, but I also wanted to partner up with somebody who could help me with really just creating better systems around the aspect of it, really just making it more sophisticated. So I knew, I had already identified a couple partners that were willing to partner up and kind of show me the ropes through that partnership. And so as soon as I found the right deal and made it work, went out there, visited the property, toured the property, came back and made the case that this was the deal that we should partner on. They agreed, and we got it done.
Nice. So what does your portfolio consist of currently?
So it's mostly 100 unit plus buildings. We do own some C-class. We tend to stay closer towards the C plus B type properties. So, it's just a mix. I mean, the smallest one, I still have the 14 units. So, like I said, I'm selling that. And then we've got a couple of like 50 units in that range. And then everything else is 100 unit plus. And we're actually, we've got a piece of property under contract. It's a 12-acre tract as well. And we're actually going to develop that out. We've partnered with a developer here that I know personally here in Houston, and he's going to partner with me, and that'll be my first development. I mean, he's been doing this for 20 plus years. So I'm excited about that. What
do you see the COVID-19 and all that affecting the development side?
It's definitely, so specifically talking to lenders, I get a mixed feeling from both. There's a lot of lenders who still are not lending. There's a lot of lenders who are like, yeah, now's the right time. And I do agree, because I mean, we're filming this at the end of May. And so we've already had April collections. We've had May, personally in my portfolio, May collections were better than April. In April, my average collections were still around 93, 94%. So, we're on track to achieve better than that this month. So I think that there is the feeling that we're kind of coming out of this. I know depending on the part of the country you live in, you may not agree, but I'm in Texas and, we're back in business for the most part. I mean, our gyms opened up this week. I got back into the gym for the first time in a couple months. So it's been nice to get back in my routine, and that's the same for a lot of the states that we invest in, and it's regardless of your opinion, it is more or less political at this point, but the southern states seem to be more open to allowing the citizens of the state to get back to business and get back to working. So it's good for us. It's good for our residents. And I think, as it pertains to development, we are getting a lot of interest from some lenders. We haven't taken it to market to our investors yet, but, I anticipate it's going to be responded to well. I mean, we've already done some proactive surveying to see if they would be interested in, and the response has been very good. Because when you think about it too, by the time we start lease ups, we're looking at 18 to 24 months from the time that we close. So, we're planning to close that in early to mid-August. So, by then we should be fully removed from the COVID-19, hopefully.
Is that in Houston?
No, that's in Alabama.
Okay. So tell me about the most unique or interesting deal that you've invested in.
I would say it's probably the first one that we raised capital on. It was a 56 unit deal. The unique aspect of it is, we had to take that deal down to 50% occupancy within the first 3 months of ownership, which was pretty unexpected, just because we had a lot of non-paying residents. And so, the property manager that we had at the time, she did a good job of getting the bad tenants out, but we were struggling to lease it back up and get the units turned quickly. So we ended up making a change at the property manager. And as soon as we did, that really accelerated. And so that happened, we took it down, like I said, 50% within the first 3 months. By month 9, we were back up to 100% occupied. And on the renovated units, we were achieving our 3rd year projected rents. So it was really cool story, cool experience, and huge testament to our property manager and how, just how diligent they were to understanding the market and really pushing rents in a positive way. So
how did you do that to bring it from 50 to 90?
Well, we just focused on turning the units as quickly as we could, just getting them. We had obviously a bunch of units. I mean, 56 unit property, that's, roughly that's 23, 24 units that were vacant. So, we picked off the ones that weren't as bad. We just got them rent ready as quickly as possible, and then immediately went back out to market at the same rents. And then on the ones where we had more time, we were doing our full renovation plan. And so, we had a bunch of units that were coming back online that were still at the current rents. And then we just kept chipping away. And then finally, we got it back up and we hovered between 98 and 100% occupancy. And then, really from there on out, once we got to about 80% occupied, everything was becoming a full renovation at that point. So, we were able to renovate during that time about 30% of those, which now we're still, we've taken it slow because we've still had a lot of tenants who just haven't moved out. So we're about 45, 50% completed on those renovated units. We're real excited to sell that deal whenever it comes.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I've been listening to your kind of story as you progress here. I'm getting excited because you might be like my doppelganger. So, I started with the live and flip as well. Sold it, nice profit. Wanted to get into the game. So easy, lowest barrier to entry for me, or the easiest one to get into was flipping. So I started doing some flipping. Like, man, this is a lot of work, and I'm still working a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I immediately went into small multifamily. Spent all my money in multifamily, and it was all illiquid. So now I was like, crap, now I got to scale up to, if I want to grow, scale up to bigger apartments and stuff like that. And so that was pretty funny. And then that 14 unit. So I started calling those like that first like real investment property you have, like the sandbox property, to where you can kind of learn the game, flush out all your strengths and weaknesses, and learn a lot of the tricks. But it's on like a small property relatively, to where you're like, if something goes wrong, you're not going bankrupt. Where if you did those same mistakes on like the 100 units that you're doing, now you're losing, tens, hundreds, thousands of dollars. So I like those sandbox properties where you learn all your systems in this small scale and blow it up later. And then the 56 unit sounds really familiar, like our 52 unit, Duke, where we bought it and immediately had a like clean house down to like, high 50s occupancy, and cleaned a bunch of people. And it was like the next month, like we closed in July, and I think August collections were like 30% or something. It was so bad. Like everybody was just like, new management's in town, like let's just not do anything. So we ended up cleaning house, and then we're here 9 months later, and our property manager is killing it. I think the biggest thing for that is having high-speed property managers, but also property managers that are willing to listen to you at like your techniques and your plans. I think a lot of property managers that I've dealt with, like they're kind of stuck in their ways. Like, this is the way I do it. This is what I like to do. I'm not interested in like learning the new tricks on the street. But like guys like us, like we spend a lot of time and energy educating ourselves on repositions and stuff like that. So we know a lot of different techniques to increase occupancy or raise rents or all these things. And some property managers just aren't into it. So you have to make sure you place the right ones that are willing to listen to you as your plans for the reposition. So that's exciting. So
yeah,
are you looking
I would
for
agree
deals
with
now?
that. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned, and I'm still experiencing it now, because I've got about 3 different property managers that I manage. I'm starting to kind of move everything under one, and it's because they are the most open-minded.
Yep.
And they've been around the longest, or they've probably been around the same amount of time as one of the others, which is about 30 years. So you would think that they have kind of like an old school mindset around it, but they've been able to really just kind of keep with the times, and so they're open to feedback from me, and they really they kind of cater to me, and they cater to their owners. So that's a big part of why, they do manage the property well. Of course, they have really good systems in place, and they're really tight on the budgets and everything else. That's all important too. But like you said, the biggest thing that I just like about them is that they'll take the time to really, they take a vested interest in me versus like these other 2 property managers. I mean, to be honest, it just feels like I'm kind of a nuisance to them when I ask questions, or like in stressful times, like when it's tax season and you're doing all this back and forth with the accountant around what's this charge, what's this, and just having somebody that will really take the time to kind of just be patient and just get it done. So
yeah, well, you said right there the property managers that are owner centric versus resident centric, and a lot of them, they can't they don't have the time and energy to be both, right? So they tend to they cater to the residents at the expense of the owner. So, and I see it in some of my property managers that I've had, where they just play they put fires out. They play whack-a-mole when it comes to handling the residents' problems as soon as possible at the expense of the owner's bottom line. So every single maintenance call comes in, somebody will be right out, like and then I get the bill. I just paid $150 for somebody to flip a breaker. Like, you couldn't walk the tenant through that on the phone. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, so there's a lot of stuff like that. Like, they just it's good they have good customer service, because they don't want to get the bad reviews on Google and stuff like that, because they have their firm to protect, but it's always going to be at the expense of us. So they're always sending maintenance people out there, always sending giving them breaks, giving them concessions. And so that's when I was like, wait, hold on here, like, this needs to change. So
Right.
being able to identify that is quickly will save you so much time and energy in the long run. Are you looking for deals now?
We're still looking to acquire the value add deals. I mean, it's definitely, of course, it's harder. And I feel like just in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic, where a lot of owners have kind of pulled back and they want to let the dust settle a little bit. But I also, at the same time, there's owners that are still testing the market, and so we're still pretty active, and we still have a lot of investors that are still wanting to invest in multifamily on the passive side as well. So, the numbers are going to change a little bit. Our underwriting is going to look a little different just based on where we are and what we're seeing as far as loan terms and things like that.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, if the numbers work, the numbers work. So, you just got to make sure that you're looking at a couple things, and especially on the heavy value add we've done. I heard this story. We were closing on a bridge loan and we ended up having to change lenders. We just closed on a deal last Friday, and
Nice.
we ended up having to change lenders. Thanks. We changed lenders halfway through, and because they stopped lending when the virus hit. So, found a lender that was still lending. And, one of the things that came back with is, hey, we're still lending, but we require interest reserves. I said, no big deal, because that's one of the things that I actually always underwrite as part of my underwriting is just debt reserves, just something that I can put aside. So that was already factored into our underwriting and analysis. And my attorney was actually telling me a story about one of the other deals that he was also trying to close at the same time. The lender wasn't pulling out of the deal, but when they required 12 months worth of interest payments or loan payments at closing, they didn't have it. So they actually had to go back to their investors and communicate to them. And, and I mean, as an investor, I'm sure that they are understanding, just because, we were in a global pandemic, a black swan event. But, that's just something that I always factor in. And I usually try to get, I'll start with 12 months in my underwriting, but then I'll come off if I can, and or if I felt like I needed to. And then, of course, just settle somewhere in the middle once we get the actual loan terms. But yeah, so, that's just part of being prepared, and that's how we were able to still get that deal closed.
Yeah, very similar thing happened to us. We closed the deal last month, and same thing. Like we at the very beginning of the pandemic, so early March or late February or something like that. We started hearing whisperings from other friends and colleagues that are really plugged in with like the agency lenders, and they're like, hey, we're thinking 12 months payments or 18 months payment reserves. So we, Duke and I, immediately went back to our underwriting and started plugging that in. Our lenders haven't said anything about it until like 2 weeks before closing. They're like, oh yeah, and we're going to need 12 months of P&I payments up front in escrow. And any other person that would have like put a stop on the deal because they weren't prepared for it. They didn't underwrite if they did like the standard 2 to 3 months. But we were plugged into the network, plugged into to our friends and our colleagues in the game here that are active, and we started underwriting early, so we really didn't skip a beat when they told us. So yeah, absolutely, yeah, we got hit with the 12 months. So
yeah, it can kill a lot of deals, and it's still at this point in time, even Fannie and Freddie, it's still required. So yeah. I'm sure at some point they'll come off of that, but not sure when.
Yep. So what is your favorite ninja trick for increasing NOI by increasing income or decreasing expenses? And is there one thing that you do, like it's your favorite thing to do to increase NOI?
So one thing that we just implemented is we changed the way that the managers are bonused. So the traditional way is that managers are bonused off of, and now the local manager, the local property manager, the leasing agent, they're bonused off of like whenever they lease a unit or whenever they get a renewal. So we directly align that bonus payment to be towards collections only. So no matter what the occupancy is, it's based on collections. And so it really just aligns their interest with us, but we're rolling that across the entire portfolio so that, and now we're going to have a dollar metric. So, at the beginning of every year, we're going to set the threshold. So, based on gross potential rents. And then we'll go, like a tiered approach, 98, 96, 94%, they're still getting bonuses, but below 90, they don't get a bonus at all. But, and that's based on purely collection, 90% collection. So that no matter what, even if like in one of our properties, the manager hasn't had a bonus all year because she's been at 100% full. So how do you keep her engaged? We want to incentivize her by focusing more on collections. And so, and in turn, it also will increase occupancy anyways, because if you set that collections at like, whatever the dollar amount is, if it's based on gross potential rents at 100% occupancy, they know that the only way that they're going to be able to increase their bonus is by keeping the property full. So they still got to continue leasing units in order to keep that gross potential rent where it needs to be so that they have a better opportunity to get their bonus. So that's the trick for, I think, just increasing income. It's not so much tied to a unit or a RUB system or anything, but, we definitely manage our expenses pretty well, but it all comes down to collections at the end of the day.
Yep. So we do something very similar, and we're going to be getting a lot more aggressive with it. So we do a base, the base fee that property managers get. I think ours is like 6 or 7% base, and then we do bonuses, but ours are based off of NOI targets. So we set a specific NOI for that quarter that they need to achieve, and then the other one is the economic, collections, the economic occupancy. So if they keep their economic occupancy, above that, whatever that number we associate with, say 94%, they'll get another percentage bonus. So we did the NOI to keep them aligned with the expenses to prevent them from doing that, whack-a-mole. I'm just going to keep putting fires out regardless of how much it costs. Because now if we hit an NOI target, then they're going to, or if they have an NOI target, they're going to be a lot more cognizant of the expense side of the house too. Of, am I going to pick up the phone, 50 times a day to send the handyman over, or whatever, to go look at, something dumb, or am I going to pay this contractor to charge me $200 for a light bulb? So that's what we did. So it's awesome to see that other operators are doing very similar things. And you said the key word there, which was aligned. You want all your team members aligned and rowing in the same direction. Because if your property managers are incentivized by, if their metrics are, half month's rent every time they get a turnover, what are they incentivized to do? They're incentivized to turn units. So that's not going to help your economic occupancy at all. So it doesn't really, you're definitely misaligned. So keeping everybody aligned on the same, rolling the same way, I think is the traction slogan. Yeah, that is awesome. What systems have you put in place that you think have had the best ROI on your growth or efficiency as a company?
I think it's just tracking weekly numbers. We have a weekly call with our manager, and we don't cover every single property because some of the properties are stabilized. And so we only cover them maybe on a bi-weekly process or basis. But we always have that standing call every week. And so, especially like once we acquire a property like we did last week, we're going to talk about that specific property probably every week for at least a few months until we get further through the transition. So, a lot of people do that, but we also, track weekly metrics, and we track just activity, of course, how many units are, how many skips did you have that week? How many units are occupied that week? Where are collections that week? What did they collect? And then what did they collect on the delinquencies? And so, they're the ones filling it out so we can see it. And we give a lot of ownership into the manager's hands on site so that they know that I mean, it's plain as day. What do we expect versus where things are? So there's like a sense of self accountability there by our managers to know that they've got to come with answers on every week why, if things are off, or if things are going well that week, then it's a short discussion, and it's maybe we're not focused more on those numbers. We're focused more on what are the projects looking like and things like that. So
that's you're probably like the fifth person that said that on our guest. Is one of their best things have been the weekly calls. We call ours the pulse check. Other people call theirs the the level 10 meeting, or whatever they want to call that Monday morning huddle. Meeting is one of the most important things to keep the team engaged. But then also, like you said, again, keywords there were having the management team take ownership, because they know that they're going to have to answer. Like Friday night, they're getting ready to go out the weekend, and they're like, man, on Monday, he's going to ask me, why this happened. So they're already like either fixing the problem or getting their alibis together and how they're going to fix it, the following week of whatever issue that just happened. So just having the meeting in place is already important to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier about increased interest reserves for your underwriting, but what other changes have you made to underwriting?
So I think one of the key changes is to make sure that you're keeping rents flat through year one. But frankly, that's not a change that we made, because we've always kept rents flat through year one. So I hear a lot of guys that are talking about it now. It's that specific question, like, what are you doing? We're just, we're keeping rents flat for first year, and we're increasing our CapEx. And it's like, a lot of those things we were already doing. And frankly, if we needed to, because I went through this assessment, if we needed to, we could have stayed, or we could have not had income come into the property and paid off our mortgage payments for 12 months on most of our properties, because that's how much cash we had in the bank, or more in most cases. So, but that's one thing that I would say, if somebody isn't doing that already, I just do that as a best practice from, at any point, just don't expect rents to increase within that first 12 months.
Got it. Okay, so let's shift to our fire round. What is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
The best book in general, or specific topic?
Business or real estate?
Real estate, you said? I think one of the books that really helped me the most in the multifamily space was Multifamily Millions. That's the Dave Lindahl books. Yeah. That was really, I read a lot of books around the same time that I was reading, that I read that book. And so, but that one stuck out the most just because he simplified the process and simplified everything. So,
yeah, that was our book of the month giveaway at our meetup this month.
Nice.
What is your superpower?
My superpower. I like to think that I am good at building rapport pretty quickly. I come from a sales background, and I'm not like, this is kind of my personality, my nature. I'm not really like, used car salesman type. I generally try to take the time to get to know somebody, and that's helped me get a lot of deals through the brokers, just because, was able to build some quick rapport and build relationships with them.
All right. So as we wrap this up, do you have any requests for our audience, and how can people reach out to you?
I don't know about any requests. Anybody can reach out. My website is TruePointCap.com. My email is kjones@TruePointCap.com. I'm pretty easily accessible. I'm on all the social media channels. So I like to try to answer any questions when people reach out, and, with anything really. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me, guys.
All right, thanks, Kyle. Bye.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
That was a great show, Duke. Kyle did not disappoint at all, walking us through that 56 unit deal he did, where it went 50% occupied, and having to use his skills and his experience to really drive that property back up to performing. And he did it less than a year. So outstanding performance from Kyle and his team on that first 56 unit deal they did as their first big property. Also, I love the tips on his property management, incentivizing them, aligning everybody in the same direction by changing their fee and pay structure to go off of rents collected versus just a flat flat rent fee, which is awesome. Doing their weekly calls, and this is probably the 10th time we heard that from operators. Is one of their best practices is staying engaged with all their property managers on the ground in the field, and doing that weekly call is absolutely key to the success of any business. Is keep everybody engaged and accountable for their roles and responsibilities. And then also, of course, you plug the Multifamily Millions book. Dave Lindahl, that's a great book. I read it a few years ago, and I love that book. Like he said, it breaks up very complex problems and actions down to very digestible chunks. And it's just a good starting book for anybody interested in multifamily.
If you're interested in connecting with us, go to tricityequity.com to learn more. To connect with like-minded investors, join our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily and more. If you found value in this podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. If you know anyone who might resonate with today's podcast, please share the episode with them. See you next time.
See you, Duke.